Seeing none, all those in favor of the vice chair's motion to approve the commission minutes for the week of January 17th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, minutes are approved. All right, let's move into work session. As stated, we have moved item number 3 on our work session to the first matter this morning. This is commission initiated, the READY project to review initial report and act on recommendations prepared by Steve Spryopoulos, PMSA of Reunion Consulting Group. Is there staff handling this morning? All right, Commissioner Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief recap. Last year, the legislature appropriated funds for the agency's software modernization project, and we affectionately call this project READY, which stands for Repair or Replace EDI. EDI, of course, stands for the Electronic Database and Docket Information System that was built by the state ITSD department for this agency a few years back. The appropriation included an allowance for us to contract a project manager software analyst. Last summer, we worked with the Procurement Bureau on an exhaustive search and selection process. And on November 1st of 2021, Steve Spyropoulos of Reunion Consulting Group was contracted to assess the agency's software needs and manage the procurement and implementation of a new and/or enhanced software solution to fulfill the agency's technology needs for case management, data management, and customer relations. What you have before you today is Reunion Consulting Group's preliminary report summarizing initial findings and providing a set of recommendations for how we should proceed with the READY project. I would note that this report was prepared with extensive staff involvement and based on his work with our staff and with commissioners throughout the agency. This report marks the conclusion of phase 1 of the READY project, which was the discovery phase to determine whether EDI can be repaired or if it needs to be replaced. Reunion Consulting Group finds that EDI is not sound and has never been fit for its intended purposes. And our CG recommends not to attempt to repair EDI and instead to procure a platform-based managed case management system that will replace EDI at first and then be configured to address the gaps in functionality documented in the report. Reunion Consulting Group is recommending a case management system that can be configurable so that PSC staff with the necessary authorization and training would be able to maintain the system in the long term without relying on any outside vendors or any software development staff in order to make changes to the system. On page 7 and 8 of the report, you'll find an outline of the high-level project milestones for phase 2 and phase 3 as the best means for ensuring a smooth transition as much as possible and completing the project. A quick highlight of those steps include that in phase 2, Reunion Consulting Group would create a statement of work, basically identifying the details of what the system would entail, and then help us identify and evaluate feasible replacement systems and system integrators, personnel to actually integrate the system to us once we identify one that we would like to purchase. And in this process in phase 2, RCG will assist us in developing cost estimates for the READY implementation. And I would note that I have asked Mr. Spyropoulos to work within the constraints of the appropriation that's been given to us and to advise us if that appropriation is not, if it's not feasible to work within that appropriation, which is far less than the initial estimated cost, that he would work with us to develop adjusted estimates and possibly work on a supplemental budget request if that's necessary. But we won't know until we get into phase 2 further and develop those cost estimates. And I think if you've read the report, you can see the other milestones that are outlined within that report. But these are the high-level milestones that would actually get us through identifying and selecting a replacement system and bringing that system online and training and ensuring that the system is fully tested and working well, and the staff is able to function and work with it. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I want to report that I'm very happy to report that the ACT team and our computer system analyst and our consumer assistant supervisor all concur in the report and its recommendations. And Mr. Spiropoulos, who's our Ready project manager, and Mr. English, our in-house consumer or computer systems analyst, are on hand here today to answer any technical questions commissioners may have. And Mr. Spiropoulos will be here the week of February 21st in person as well.
Questions or discussion? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, Commissioner Fielder, I guess, or Philip or Mr. Spiropoulos. I look on page 7, phase 2, number 2, will identify and aid PSC in evaluating feasible replacement systems and system integrators will make recommendations. So who would actually be constructing the new system? You mentioned about they would make recommendations on what to purchase, but I thought the report made a really good case for saying we can't go with some ready-made product because we don't own the code to it, and it would be very difficult to do it. We couldn't work on it in-house. I don't understand. Are we going to eventually hire somebody to rebuild a system from the ground up, or just buy something from someplace else?
Commissioner
Mr.
Fielder, would you like to?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, would, if we could have Mr. Spiropoulos, I think he can put this complicated project in plain English, perhaps best. So Mr. Spiropoulos, did you hear the question, and can you answer, please?
Yes, Commissioner Fielder, I heard the question. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. To Commissioner O'Donnell, I believe, is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, so the answer to your question would be that we would hire a vendor that would come in and do the system integration. That means they would do the installation of this software, whatever the software is that we find is the best fit to meet the needs of the agency. They would implement, they would configure the software, and then pass it over to us for testing once they're done with their initial configuration. So that would be a process by which this vendor works closely with myself and the team at PSC to integrate the new functionalities, test them, and make sure they're meeting the needs of the agency. And that's how we would proceed with that project.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm still confused here. It seems to me that you made a good case for not buying a ready-made product because we wouldn't really own it, and therefore we wouldn't be able to, at our desire to adapt it to whatever needs come up in the future. But you're saying that the contractor would purchase something and then adapt it to us. I'm not sure. It would seem to me that because of all the very, very comprehensive job that you did in listing the shortcomings of Eddy, that it would be much better to just get rid of Eddy and just rebuild it from the ground up. So you seem to be making an argument two ways. One, it's totally inadequate, and the other one that we should buy something, but we don't have full use of it. I'm still confused.
Okay, my apologies. Let me further clarify. So when we talk about off-the-shelf software, which is what they call a COTS product, that's buying something that's already been programmed and designed, and then it forces you as an agency to change your business processes or mold yourselves to the limitations of that software. Mm-hmm. What I'm proposing we do is we purchase what's called a platform. A platform is, think of it as a blank canvas. You get to paint the painting, and then you're given the actual brush palette later if you want to change the painting. You don't have to have the vendor do that change for you later. That's what a platform does. So it's not a pre-programmed set of functions that you have to adapt to. It is actually literally, like I said, a canvas that you get to paint from the ground up. So it's almost like designing your own software. But the beauty of it is you don't have to program anything. You can do all of the changes through configuration. And if we train the staff to have administrative access, then they can maintain the system in the long term. Does that make sense?
Olaf?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. It does. And again, I wanted to let you know that certainly I've had difficulties with the EDDI system that you outlined on there, but the comprehensiveness of your listing of the deficiencies of it made me wonder how anybody was able to get anything done here at all. I'm amazed at your insightfulness in helping me to really understand the scope of the real problem. I knew it was a mess. I didn't know how much of a mess. So thank you very much.
Additional discussion, questions?
Oh, one other thing, I just wanted to say that I'm sure that your work was incredibly assisted by the really, I'm amazed at the background of Commissioner Fielder in really spearheading this whole thing. And I think the agency, in terms of its functionality, is on a very, very good path. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. Additional discussion? I would also like to recognize Commissioner Fielder for taking the lead on this project. I would speak on probably behalf of every regulated entity that we work with, that I'm sure this project and what we're undertaking is probably welcome relief, and once completed will be beneficial not only to the agency, but also to those who regulate. So thank you, Commissioner Fielder. Additional discussion?
Mr. Chairman, before I make a motion, if you would still entertain one, I'd like to acknowledge the vice chair and his guidance in initially suggesting that we hire a professional project manager, because we didn't have this in the past. And we thought that, that the state project manager would be able to act in the capacity that this project manager now is and guide us along. And that just didn't happen. And so by the vice chair's advice, I think that was the wisest counsel that we've had regarding this project, was to pursue someone like Mr. Spiropoulos and enlist his services. So thank you to the vice chairman.
Thank you. That also reminds me that we need to thank Subcommittee D of the legislature for having the foresight to help us with this project and appropriating money for us to hire a project manager.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and also Representative Fiona Nave at Commissioner O'Donnell's suggestion has been consulted and reviewed this initial report and had some feedback that was incorporated into it. So she's also got a tremendous background in this type of a process and has been a real help for us.
Thank you. Commissioner Fielder, do you want to make a motion?
I will. Mr. Chairman, I move to accept Reunion Consulting Group's preliminary report, to concur in its findings and recommendations, and to proceed with the READY project until further commission action is necessary.
Second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, motion has been moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Commissioner Fielder's motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. English. All right, good discussion.
And thank you, Mr. Spiropoulos. I think he can be excused now, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Spiropoulos, you're free to move on with your day if you'd like, or you can continue listening to our work session. Let's move back into regular order on our agenda. So this would be what was labeled as work session item number 1. This is commission initiated pipeline safety rulemaking to consider a draft notice of amendment. Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, commissioners. This particular work session concerns the annual update to the pipeline safety rules that the commission has adopted. Every year, we need to update the date of incorporation of the most recent federal rules on the subject. We issued a notice of proposed rulemaking that received no comment, no feedback. So the matter is now ready for the commission to adopt a final rule. In your meeting materials for today is a draft of the notice of amendment that would adopt the final rule. So staff's recommendation is to authorize staff to publish that with the Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Is there a motion, Vice Chair Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's wholly appropriate here that we adopt a staff recommendation in this document, and I would move that we do so.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner O'Donnell seconded. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the Vice Chair's motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. All right, let's move to work session item number 2. This is commission initiated as well. This is the nominal voltage standard rulemaking. Also here to consider draft notice of amendment, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. This, again, is an update of the incorporation date of the most recent standards for electricity nominal voltage in the Commission's rule at 38.5.2102. Again, we did not receive any comment or feedback from the public on this particular rulemaking, so it is ripe for the Commission's action. And as before, staff recommends that the Commission authorize the publication of this draft notice of amendment as it appears in your materials for today.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Is there a motion, Vice Chair Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve staff recommendation and move forward with the adoption of the rule on nominal voltage standards.
Is there a second? I'll second. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the Vice Chair's motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. As noted, we have deferred work session item number 4 to the Commission business meeting of Tuesday, February 1st, 2022. I would just remind the public and those in the room and commissioners that we will have a listening session at 1:30 p.m. today. This is in docket number 2021.09.117 MDU in the matter of Montana Dakota Utility Co's biannual electric integrated resource plan. Listening session will start at 1:30 and will end upon completion of all comments and questions. We will be here in the Bollinger Conference Room. Seeing no other business, this meeting is now 9:50 and this meeting is adjourned.